What's going on, guys? And welcome to Rabbit's Used Cars, where the customer is always right. Wait a minute. When you're in business for yourself, sometimes you have to swallow your pride. And you have to listen to complaints that have nothing to do with you, especially in new car sales. I mean, you got to think about it. I sell these cars, we go through them, we check them out as good as we can, obviously. And there's problems, I mean, it happens sometimes. Their machines are made to break. You got to think like new car salesmen. They didn't build that damn car. They don't know nothing about it. All they did was fill out the paperwork and, grind out a deal with you. I mean, that's it. But that customer, that's who you dealt with. They want to come to that salesman and they want to tell you how crappy something is or how something's not right or this ain't doing this. And I had it when I worked at the Ford place. Of course, you have from time to time here. You have time everywhere. And no matter what business you're in, not even sales so much, customer's always right. Customer's always right. A funny story. So this is one of my latest buys. You're like, hey, Rob, I've seen that Suburban before. Yeah, you have. If you want to jump back a few videos, we actually own this Suburban 3 times now. She is the Boomerang Burban is her new name. This is one of 2 cars actually I bought from a guy. I sold it to him and he loved it, and then we ended up working out a deal, and I bought his baby, and I even got the old Burban too. Had a little money left over, so we just went ahead and brought her back because that's just good inventory. I was thinking about the old Burban and going down the road, and what made me think about this story is, think about we sent a hauler to get the one car. Well, then I messed around and bought this. So I said, hell, I had a buddy with me. Okay, we jumped in and drove it back. 400 miles. This thing just hit the road. So we stopped about halfway in. I said, hey, you need to fuel up? He said, no, I'm good. Man, this thing gets awesome fuel mileage. And just bragging about how good fuel mileage is on this 84 Suburban. Now keep in mind, this is a carbureted small block Chevrolet, and it does have an overdrive transmission. But he said, man, just hit the highway 70 mile an hour, just cruising. He goes, this thing just floats, it just makes gas. He said, hell, gas hands barely moved on it. And just brag about how good the fuel mileage is. Got it here, still got a half tank fuel. I mean, just like bragging about it. And it got me thinking, it actually reminded me of a story. A really good friend of mine, he's passed away now. His name was Jim. And Jim actually worked in the parts department with me at CarMax. And Jim was a dealership rat from way back. He worked in dealerships his entire life, from big truck dealers all the way down to, car dealers. I mean, so regular, dealerships, small cars. Big towns, small towns. He moved around and he was that guy, and had a story for everything. I love that guy. I miss him. I think about him all the time. But anyway, so me and Jim, we were talking, and he was talking about when he worked at Natalie Chevrolet in Atlanta, Georgia. Natalie Chevrolet's, old school dealership way back in the day. And he was talking about a Suburban when he was working in the parts department that came through the service drive, brand hammer new, and the man was complaining about the fuel mileage on it. And I don't remember the exact year. It had to be like a square body Suburban. He goes, complaining that there's no way this truck is getting the fuel mileage you claim it gets. And I don't know what they told him it would get or what the EPA, well, I don't even think that was a thing back then, but you know what I'm saying. So they're saying this thing gets horrible fuel mileage. The guy said, it's just not doing what it's supposed to do. I love the truck. Fuel mileage is horrible on this thing. And he just raising immortal hell. They'd go through the service department, they check the distributor and they put fresh plugs in it and make sure the carburetor's tuned just right. Matter of fact, ordered him a brand new carburetor and put on it, put a brand new quadrojet on it, and just did all this work to make this man happy. And literally, just like a boomerang, it came right back. This thing, man, the fuel mileage is horrible on this truck. Every time, are you towing anything with it? No, I'm just riding around town. And fuel mileage is horrible. It don't matter if I'm on the highway or around town, it's horrible. And there was nothing they could do to make this man happy. Nothing. So finally, one of the technicians and service riders got together and they devised a way to figure out what kind of fuel mileage this truck is getting in a timely manner. They disconnected the fuel line going to the gas tank. It's got a manual fuel pump on the front of the motor. So they took that hose and they zip tied a quart mason jar. Ran a hose through the metal lid. Well, let's see how fast he'll go through this quart of gas. Times that by 4, that's what you get miles per gallon. And he said, we're going to drive it and see what the fuel mileage is. So they made sure everything was tuned and everything was just perfect. And they set up their little deal and they zip tied it under the hood. These trucks have the jack on the inner fender well. And they actually zip tied that mason jar to the jack. Quart mason jar full of gas. Rubber hose, running down a fuel pump, motor. So they took it for a test drive. This man was waiting, because you got to think about it. If this thing's getting horrible fuel mileage it's not going to take long to burn a quart of gas. So technician gets in it, drops her in D, test drive time. Riding around Atlanta. So he's riding. The service rider walks out, and my buddy Jim's in the parts department watching all this happen. Service rider walks out. He's still gone. Man comes in. Is he back yet with my truck? He said he's still gone. You know, think about it. They didn't have cell phones back then. Or they weren't common. Hell, an hour goes by. He's still gone. Well, maybe he ran out of fuel somewhere. Well, 2 hours goes by. They send someone out to look for him. He was about a mile down the road from the dealership, standing next to a charred Suburban. Somewhere driving this thing, the zip tie must have broke, and it actually busted the glass jar on the manifolds. Literally, you got to think about it. Those manifolds are 250, 300 degrees. And she went up in flames. And just like that, the problem solved itself. Insurance paid it off. The man bought him another car somewhere else. And at the end of the day, we got a happy customer, and we got one less complaining customer. Every time I hear a complaint, I think back and I think about the Suburban story and things like that. And a lot of times there are legitimate problems. And you got a lot of times that people are the problem. Just one of those days at the car lot, I guess. Guys, we'll catch you next time here at Rabbit's Used Cars. All they did was fill out the damn paperwork you had to deal with. Just kidding. But